Triumph des Villains, or Triumph of the Will, is a work that I like to bring into conversation with discussion of utopian ideas in the early 20th century, because it is effectively a statement about the creation of a utopia, or, it offers a utopian-like vision. In this case, of course, it's the vision of the Nazis. This film is a piece of propaganda. It's, one of the most notorious and we might say even skillful pieces of propaganda that was made in the 20th century. Film was a relatively new medium at this point. Films with sound, with talkies as they're called, had only been around for 6 or 7 years when the filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl, shot the footage that would become Triumph of the Will. And so the Nazis were kind of latching on to a relatively new technology to present their case to the people of Germany and really to the people of the world, because this was intended to be distributed kind of widely, right? And so let's talk about how this, is a utopian vision. Of course, we'll talk about some of the problems of this and, some of the propagandistic elements of it. This film, to me, is chilling. Hindsight offers us a perspective that people in 1934-35, when this film was made and released, did not have. Hitler sounded to many people all over the world like a wise and capable and effective leader of a country who was getting results, right? Who had taken a country that was, rather woebegone, and had turned it around in relatively short fashion. Of course, the Nazis, presented things as a little rosier than they really were. But this was appealing to people all over the world, and certainly to people in Germany. So that's something we have to acknowledge, right? It's easy to look at something, anything that's associated with the Nazis, and feel our blood run cold, and it should, given the atrocities and the amount of destruction that they unleashed on the world. But at the same time, reading them in context, this is it gives us a slightly different perspective on this, and one that I think we should recognize. The filmmaker was a woman, which was significant. Her name was Leni Riefenstahl. She was only 32, 33 years old or something like that when this film was made. She had made a name for herself as an actress and a filmmaker in the 1920s. She had even been subjected to kind of rather harsh treatment in the film industry, belittled by her entirely male, group of colleagues. But her films drew the attention of Adolf Hitler, and he met with her, I believe, even before he became Chancellor of Germany, and convinced her to participate in, making films about the Nazi Party, about the new Germany that they were trying to create. They had this working relationship, even friendship, close partnership. I will say that Leni Riefenstahl, she made Triumph of the Will, released in 1935. She went on to make a film about the Summer Olympics that were held in Berlin in 1936, which was really just another piece of Nazi propaganda. This was released as the film Olympia in 1938. And so those are her two major propaganda works. She was arrested and sort of charged or tried, but she was released. She was found not guilty of war crimes or anything like that. This did hurt her as a filmmaker later. She tried to make films, post World War II. She actually lived until, I believe, 2002 or something like that. So she was like 100 years old when she died. Maybe it wasn't that long. I can't recall. But anyway, she, was active in the creation of art, as it were, later on, but never was able to rise to any heights making films because of her association with the Nazi Party. The occasion for the Triumph of the Will, this is a documentary. The Nazis were holding a party congress in the city of Nuremberg, or Nuremberg as it's called in English, in September of 1934. And this was not the first party congress they had held, but it was to be, and it did become, one of the largest gatherings of Nazi Party members in the history of the party. Something like 700,000 people showed up for this thing. So this is a massive rally. They constructed a stadium for these rallies, and they had both indoor and outdoor kind of venues for this. Coincidentally, if you visit the city of Nuremberg today, and I highly recommend it, it's a really beautiful city. If you ever visit Germany, the indoor party congress hall or rally hall has been turned into a museum about kind of the Nazi era, and including the atrocities and things of the Nazi era. The parade ground where these hundreds of thousands of people gathered, to be filmed and to listen to speeches by Hitler and other Nazi brass, some of them are still there, right? So Nuremberg still has, more than any other city in Germany, some of the remnants of the Nazis, and I think that they tried to keep that in place for a reason, to remember the misdeeds of the past, which I think is maybe a good idea. Some key scenes here. Now, remember, we're reading this as a utopia. They're trying to present this vision of a Germany that has been made in a kind of ideal image. And so Hitler is presented as almost like a god. In the opening scene, and I'm not going to show you footage of this, you can watch this yourself, but, after stating, it's like, 20 years after the beginning of our misfortune, meaning the beginning of World War I, and 15 or 16 years, 15 years after the great betrayal of Germany, which means the Versailles Treaty and all of that, right? It's sort of like Germany has emerged from this darkness under the leadership of Adolf Hitler. And then, you see Hitler's plane in the clouds, and these opening scenes, it's like he's in heaven and he's a god. And then he comes down from heaven in the plane. And here you have, a still shot of that. Sorry, these are rather pixelated and blurry. It's the best I could do, taking screenshots off of YouTube. But the plane comes down and lands in Nuremberg, and he emerges from the plane and is processed through the city to the adulation of everyone. The entire city has been decked out in Nazi flags with swastikas. And they greet him with the Nazi salute to tremendous praise, almost like they're praising their god, right? Another key scene, I think, is one of the first in the film. It's like the third major scene, and that is this shot, or this kind of montage of the Hitler Youth Camp. Now, the Hitler Youth were an organization of young men. There was also a corresponding organization of young men known as the Deutsche Mädelchor, or the German Young Women's Corps. But the Hitler Junge, or the Hitler Youth, have this Boy Scout looking like camp, and you've got a still shot of it right here. And then the film shows them getting ready for the day. They're washing, they're shaving, they're combing their hair, they're eating healthy food, they're participating in all kinds of games that are to build their physical and their mental capacities. You've got them wrestling and boxing and running and doing kind of team building sorts of things. And it's this idealistic vision of these very attractive young men with smiles on their faces. This is the future of Germany and all of that. I mean, the really chilling thing to consider there is that probably a hefty proportion of them, maybe the vast majority of them, actually died in World War II. Those young men would grow up to become the soldiers in the Wehrmacht and go off and die in things like the Battle of Stalingrad, right? So it's likely that most of those young men did not survive the next few years, not into later adulthood. But anyway, the Hitler Youth Camp scene is one that you should pay some attention to. The speeches by Nazi Party leaders, one in particular, I believe, it's made by Rudolf Höss, who was, Rudolf Hess, not Höss. There are two. Rudolf Höss was the commandant of Auschwitz. Rudolf Hess was he was like the third in command in the Nazi regime. third or fourth or something. Anyway, he gives a speech where he praises Hitler, and he says things like, "Sie sind Deutschland, you are Germany. If Germany does anything great, it's because of you," and Hitler becomes the embodiment. This is the cult of personality that we talked about in the kind of contextual video. Kind of to the extreme there. And so pay attention to those. It might be worth it to look up who these people are, because pretty much all of the key Nazi figures give speeches that are filmed in this. And then, the bulk of the film has these, what I call ritualized presentations, and then Hitler's subsequent address to these different groups. And by ritualized presentations, if we look at the next, I've got a few scenes here. One that I like to show in class when I teach this film, as a historical piece, is this one where the workers of Germany. This is the German kind of worker service corps, which is it's kind of like a nationalized labor union. They come together and they're carrying shovels. They're dressed in uniforms and in ranks. They have the swastika on their sleeve. They look like soldiers, but they're actually workers. And they go through this very ritualized thing. They do these military type drills, and then there's this one guy who's like the caller or the leader, and he says, "Where do you come from, comrade?" And it's all this like stilted language, and it looks like they're mesmerized, like they're brainwashed or something like that, And then they respond, "Aus Bayern, I come from Bavaria," and and you, comrade, where do you come from?" And then they chant and sing together, right? That's what this scene is. You got all of them singing in unison. We are all at work together in the turf marshes, in the fields, building the highways, building this. Anyway, going through everything that they're doing for Germany, and then of course Hitler addresses them afterwards. But it's this ritualized and almost like brainwashed component of that I think is key to the utopian vision that's trying to be achieved here. It's like all of these people have bought in completely to the vision that the Nazis have for Germany. And then, the Hitler Youth, it's a similar kind of thing. There's another address where Hitler talks about them as the future of Germany, that they're going to live, he's going to be long dead, but they're going to live to see Germany rise to its greatest glory, and that the Reich's going to last for 1,000 years, and, this grand vision that Hitler had. And then finally, the last scenes, day 4 of the party rally, involve the SA, the Sturmabteilung, and then the Schutzstaffel, or the SS, right? These are the special kind of paramilitary corps. It should be said that behind the scenes they were working to remove much of the leadership of the SA, and the Night of Long Knives occurs, close to this time, where many of the early, Nazi leaders of these paramilitary organizations were taken out because they were seen as not sufficiently loyal and potential threats. But here they're all completely unified. This is a rather chilling scene where this guy's giving the Nazi salute, and he says here, now realize that Germany was demilitarized in the by the terms of the Versailles Treaty. Now it's obvious that they're not offering any illusion about their remilitarization. And here this, SA figure is saying, we only await your orders in the future. And that's where this gets rather chilling. You know what's coming with hindsight there, right? But the Nazi militaristic vision, the aggression, the war of expansion, right? All of the seeds of that seem to be here. There is this aspect that we might call the Nazi aesthetic. It's this very sort of futuristic vision. I tried to take a screenshot of this where you have Hitler standing here, and he's on top of this what looks like absolutely massive rostrum podium thing, right? And then the huge Nazi flags with the swastika are behind him, and I couldn't get the whole thing on the shot here, but that's very much the Nazi aesthetic, right? They were going for this sort of thing. We see similar things in the Soviet Union under Stalin, but that's another aspect of this, right? The aesthetic of the party is futuristic. They are larger than life. They are godlike in their stature and their ability to kind of bring all of these things together and to produce these, this architecture and artistic quality that is, very utopian in nature, but given the hindsight, it's obviously, to our perspective at least, dystopic. Okay, so hopefully that gives you some sense of this. It is worth watching this as a historical piece, obviously not for the content. That's the stuff that should absolutely turn your stomach, and it does, I'm sure. Okay, thanks.